You know how your life is supposed to flash before your eyes when you die. I don't know about that, but the events leading to the situation I currently find myself in really do come to my mind so clearly and hastily that it could be described as a flash. So clearly and hastily, in fact, that I have to write them down. It just feels like destiny or something. My last sorry gift for this gruesome world. I am a part of a pretty big esport organization. You might have heard of us. We are called Spence, and at this moment we are still the best CS2 team in the world. That will change in the next majors though, since we will most likely not be doing much gaming after this. Well, it's beside the point. Had to flex a bit. Hope you understand. We had just won the CS2 majors. Our opponent and the game itself are totally irrelevant. But just know that it was a tough battle and we won. Ecstatic and on the top of the world, we went to celebrate the occasion to some local bars. After a heavy night of drinking, we booked a flight home to continue the celebration at a more relaxing and familiar place. We decided the best place to celebrate was definitely Spence's house. A small shack in the woods we jokingly refer to as our headquarters. It's a small one-room cabin with a kitchen, living room / bedroom and nothing else. No toilet, no shower. It's elevated from the ground slightly, maybe 1 meter in the air on a rocky foundation. It has one door and 2 windows, one in the kitchen area and a big one from where you can see the front door and the thick, dark forest. The ones coming to celebrate were me, Frosta, Old School Gamer, Vemki and Arauti. The other members of our team kindly declined and went to get some well-deserved sleep. Good for them. We started to drink and talk about our match. Our IGL Old School was drunkenly explaining the technicalities of the match and how we could have played better. It was fun, but I drank too much. As we all did. That's why we didn't really remember much about the evening, let alone when we went to sleep. Frosta was gone. We woke up and he just wasn't there. We looked for him everywhere, but could not find him. First, we thought that he most likely woke up early and drove home, but his car was still outside. That was odd, since we were supposed to stay in the cabin for a few days. Only clue we had were his clothes on the floor and a blanket outside next to a sofa we had carried there some years ago, meaning he most likely slept outside. We theorized that at night he was going for a piss in his boxers with the blanket on and got locked out of the cabin. That explains the sleeping outside, but doesn't explain the disappearance. We tried to call him, but it was useless. We knew the cell reception was non-existent, but we just had to try anyway. At this point, we probably should have gotten the fuck out of there and tried to make sense of his disappearance. But after a while of looking for him, we just chalk it up to him walking drunkenly to somewhere with cell reception and calling a taxi or something, since his phone was missing. In retrospect, that didn't really add up, since he would have had to walk multiple kilometers wearing just his underwear on a pretty chilly evening hoping he would get cell reception and be able to inform of his location to a taxi driver, while being totally hammered. A humorously impossible feat. But at the time of theorizing, we were already drunk from our few morning beers and didn't really care that much. The rest of the day went without anything weird happening. Vemki was set out on a mission to get more alcohol and something to eat from the closest store. He was the only one that was in any condition to drive. We started talking about Frosta again, but weren't really that worried since even if he was home and would want to contact us, he would have no way of doing so, fault of the bad cell reception. We were hopeful that maybe Vemki would have the brains to call him when he's buying alcohol, since there is reception there. That idea quickly failed when we realized the airhead had left his phone in the cabin. We cursed a little and laughed at his train of thoughts for a minute, but then kept on drinking. The hours from his expedition's beginning were starting to add up. He was nowhere to be seen. It was maybe 30 or 40 minutes by car to the store from the cabin, but he had been gone for over 5 hours. We were getting a little worried. Our drunken heads were starting to spin and come up with ideas of his whereabouts. Maybe he had suffered the same fate as Frosta, disappearing without a trace. Just before nightfall, we heard footsteps from the outside. No engine, no tires, just footsteps. An eerie feeling took hold of us as we looked at each other and quietly listened to the steps on the gravel road. It could not have been Vemki, since we didn't hear a car drive to the parking area. Who could it be? Who would walk this far into the woods at this hour? We stood up and walked to the big window overseeing the front door and waited. The moment grew tenser every second as the sound of footsteps closed in on the cabin. We could hear them right next to it. Finally, Olsku's scream broke the silence. Holy shit, it's Vemki! Vemki walked in and confusingly looked at us while we were still recovering from the heart attack. Out of breath, Vemki told us that he forgot to put more fuel in the car and it ran out of gas many kilometers from the cabin and any sign of civilization. He took the beers and walked from the car to the cabin. We all laughed our previous nervousness away at his stupidity and started happily devouring the beers he had managed to carry with him. Early in the morning, or maybe the night, I woke up to footsteps outside. It had to be one of us going to take a piss outside. The footsteps continued, so I looked around for an empty bed belonging to the one who had gone to piss, but all the beds were full. Confusing. I started listening to the steps more carefully. They were circling around the cabin. Slow, heavy-sounding steps, faintly and quietly, passing through the thin walls of the old cabin. Observant. I'm overthinking it, I said to myself after being internally embarrassed before for thinking that Vemki's steps could have been something or someone else. I convinced to myself that it was only some animal and fell back to my drunken sleep. In that sleep, I had a weird dream. It was of one of our team members, Roppeboy, who was nominated as leader of the Spence Junior Division a few months before the majors. He just didn't cut it in the main lineup anymore. I saw him smiling, with an evil look on his face. He was laughing uncontrollably and murmuring some unidentifiable language, kind of like some chant. Suddenly, the dream shifted to his cold body lying on the ground, void of life. Even though I saw him dead, I could still hear the laughter and the chanting. I woke up sweaty. It was not a nice dream. I brushed it off and went to have a morning smoke. The dream still weighing heavily on my mind, I decided to ask the boys about Roppeboy and how he is currently doing. I didn't tell them anything about the dream or about the footsteps I had heard. I didn't want to make them anxious, and truthfully, I didn't want to seem like I was scared. They told me that Roppeboy didn't take the demotion to Spence Jr. very well. I already knew that though, and I vividly remember him making a huge scene about it at our office. He was very angry and demanded an explanation. We told him that his playing was falling off and that he would be a liability in our upcoming tournaments. After that, he stormed off, and I hadn't heard from him since. What I didn't know was that apparently he had started drinking heavily, and he isolated himself from the outside world. He didn't talk to his friends or family again. I was amazed that I hadn't heard of any of this before. Maybe it was a delicate matter that wasn't really discussed much. We were pretty busy preparing for the majors too, so there was little time to focus on anything else. I got a little creeped out while hearing about Roppeboy and connecting it with the dream he was in, but I tried my best not to think about it. The thing that creeped us all out though was that while taking in some fresh air outside, we found Frosta's phone. Our already fragile theory about him walking near naked in the night and calling a taxi was now shattered to pieces. It couldn't be possible. What happened to Frosta? For the first time, we thought that we should leave and contact the authorities. The only problem was that we were all drunk, so we could not and would not drive. We decided to stay one more night to sober up and leave first thing in the morning. It was dark outside. We were sitting inside and talking about our mistakes. How could we have been so dumb? We should have contacted the police ages ago. What if Frosta is in trouble? Or worse? Araute went outside for a bathroom break. We were discussing a possible fate for Frosta. Our sobering minds were thinking about all the most terrible things that could have happened. What if he got lost? Maybe he fainted somewhere and needs help. Could he have frozen to death? The long discussion and fear for our friend ended when we realized, where was Araute? He had been outside for 30 minutes. We quickly went to look for him outside. We shouted his name, but no one answered. We needed to find him. We took some flashlights with us and marched into the woods. Through the thick, low-growing spruces and through the small forest openings we walked. The forest was dark. The only light was the faint light of the moon and the dim yellow flashlights we took with us. They were so dim that it would have been better to use our phone's lights, but in the moment it didn't cross our minds. We got startled by a loud scream that was similar to the sound that some deer make, but wrong. It didn't sound like a deer, rather it sounded like someone was trying to mimic what deer sound like. We started shouting Arauta's name louder and more intensively in hopes of finding him fast. We knew something was not right and we wanted to get out of there. Then we saw it, a small caving in the spruce branches, in the shape of a small doorway. Having no ideas left about where to look for, we walked in. Blood, flesh, rot. All the things that come to mind from the sight we laid our eyes on. Arauta's motionless body twisted in the most horrible way imaginable, resting next to Frosta's torn off body parts. The smell was horrible, and so were the bugs and creatures of the forest that had come to feast on what was left of our friend Frosta. Of all the things we had imagined that could have happened to him, this was by far the worst. The chaos that ensued was a mix of us vomiting and hysterically crying or shouting. We didn't know what to do. Amidst the panic, I saw something behind the bodies. It was Roppe Boy's severed head on something that could be called a makeshift altar. His eyeless, bloody head was smiling. A mix of sadness and guilt overwhelmed us. Was this our fault? We didn't have much time to dwell on it, because one emotion rose above these two powerful feelings. Fear. We started running out of the forest towards the cabin. Stumbling through the uneven mossy terrain we ran. Scared and exhausted, we heard the deer mimicking sounds behind us. The sounds were getting angrier and somehow sounded like they had evil intent. We saw the cabin's red walls between the trees. We knew that we couldn't stay here a minute longer and tried to go get the keys to our car from the inside. I got to the cabin's courtyard and saw something terrifying. The hex's price has been paid, so now you suffer. It was written on the big window of the cabin with what I would only assume was the blood of our deceased friend. I didn't have much time to analyze the meaning of the text, so I ran to the car with Olsku and Vemki, who had gotten the keys from the cabin. We jumped in and turned the ignition. Then we saw it. The car's headlights illuminated a silhouette in the woods. It was a tall, lanky thing with long dangling arms that almost touched the ground. Its skin was a very dark and muddy shade of green. It was rotting. We could smell its stench from inside the car. Its head was the shape of a nut, and it seemed to have a hat on its head. Its eyes were dark, with blood dripping from inside of them. It was a face very familiar to us. It resembled the mascot of our team. It was a rotting Spence. Olsku floored the gas pedal of our car and started driving us out of there as fast as possible. Through the small curving dirt roads, the sound of the gravel flying and the engine revving was keeping me sane. We weren't thinking about our speed much. We were just thinking of getting as far away from that place as possible. Curve after curve, Oldsku drove with terrifying speed. Death by car crash was feeling like a surprisingly nice way to go, compared to dying to that thing. So we didn't say anything, just sat quietly and watched the road. Suddenly, behind a sharp corner, a car appeared. It was the car that ran out of gas while Vemki was coming back from the store. There was no avoiding it on this narrow dirt road, especially at this speed. Oldsku tried to avoid it and crashed into the ditch. I woke up in the car with a broken nose from the impact of the airbag. I had no idea how long I had been unconscious. I woke up the others and saw that they were okay. After getting out of the car, we tried to continue along the road, even though we knew that closest civilization was many kilometers away. To our dismay, it was standing on the road in front of us. It looked like it was smiling. The rotting stench was almost making me puke. We started running the other direction, towards where we came from, towards the cabin. There was no other choice. We couldn't go into the forest. We would get lost and it would find us. We couldn't go towards civilization. It was standing in the way and it would kill us. So we ran. We didn't take many steps until we heard it moving. I looked back in terror as it bent down onto 4 legs and started running. It was fast. Too fast. Vemki fell down, having sustained an injury to his leg in the car crash. I looked away as I heard him screaming. The screaming stopped suddenly as I heard a sound resembling something being squished and then snapped. I dared not look back. I had no idea that I could run that fast for that long. Me and Oldsku made it back to the cabin. We were, for lack of a better word, mortified. We were so scared and so tired that we couldn't even scream or cry. It's almost like we had our souls sucked out of us. We went inside the cabin and started frantically making up ways to escape. But we came up with nothing. We started barricading the door and the windows with chairs, cupboards, beds, anything. After a long time of stacking things in front of the doors and windows, the first rays of sunlight started shining through our fortifications. A desperate and tired Oldsku walked to the kitchen window and looked outside. He removed a small bookshelf from the way of the window and said, "Sunlight, we are saved." In an instant, 2 lanky hands broke through the window and violently ripped Oldsku outside, only leaving blood and broken glass behind. I shouted for his name, but I knew that it was too late for him. So, now you understand the situation I am in. It has been many, many hours from when Oldsku was taken by the thing. After doing a lot of thinking, I am writing this with a total calmness in my mind. I cannot feel fear, despair, or sadness. I can't feel anything. All I know is that I have to write this down and tell you everything I know about the monster. So, here goes. 1. The thing is most likely a curse cast on us by Roppe Boy. In the glass it wrote about a hex and that its price had been paid. I think the price for this curse was Roppe Boy's life, as I saw his severed head smiling on the altar. Also explains the weird dream I had. I can also assume that the curse was cast on all of the Spence esport team, as it manifests as a rotting version of our mascot. Other Spence organization members should be careful, for it probably won't stop after killing me. 2. It is very fast and very strong. I haven't seen anything so easily rip a man apart before as I saw it rip Old School. Also, it ran at least at the speed of a horse, and I have no guarantee that it was the monster's maximum speed. You cannot fight it, you cannot run from it, at least on foot and alone. 3. It has a delay after every kill, maybe to make us feel more scared. After the car crash when we ran, it didn't kill us after killing Vemki. It easily could have, since it's way faster. It brings the bodies to the altar in the forest, and even after that most likely waits a bit. That's also why it didn't kill me after killing Old School. I hope that this message is found by someone after I'm dead. There is no way for me to escape, so I will leave this instruction to anyone who finds this. Show this text and inform all of the members of the Spence organization of this threat in my place. The threat is real and it's coming for you all. After finding this, never come near the Spence house again. The altar is too near here. Always stay in the cities. Never go near the forests. The creature most likely doesn't want to show itself to unrelated people, and if it doesn't care, with enough people, you could maybe kill it. Great. That's a weight off my shoulders. I managed to write it down before it got me. The last ramblings of a dying man. I don't have much longer. The sun is setting, and I can smell the rotting stench.
No niin, siinä oli DeadRot Spence Creepypasta. Aika hyvä kyllä. Mä antasin paha sanoa, tässä oli kyllä vähän kliseitä, mut mä antasin kyllä tälle niin ihan ehdottomasti niin kyllä 15/10, että tässä oli kyllä kaikki niinku aivan nappiin ja en ois kyllä parempaa tarinaa ittekään keksinyt, että joo, kiitos Jukka Palmu Paskahaamu tästä Creepypastasta ja nähdään ensi jaksossa. Se ois morjes!